Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Constant Agitation. As you can see today, there's one more person on the screen.
Yes.
We have a lovely guest. We're very excited for this conversation with the photographer Régis Defurnaux. He's a photojournalist from Belgium.
Mhm.
Hey Régis, welcome on Constant Agitation. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. And you?
I'm really, really happy to be talking to you today.
Yes, indeed.
I'm happy to be there, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it was thanks to one of the people who watch us almost every week,
Mhm.
Cedric, who's also a photographer. He put us in contact, and we are very excited to hear from you and talk to you about your work. Of course, we put on Instagram
Mhm.
a lot of questions that we,
Yeah.
for people like to ask questions, and we got some good ones. Some of them were repeated. So if you don't see your question on the screen, sorry, because somebody else asked it.
The same, yeah.
We
yeah.
had
So,
to pick one.
or they are kind of very related, and we think like they would just be represented already. Yeah.
Yes. But before we get into that, Régis, how about you give us some introduction about yourself, what kind of photography you do, and, the usual stuff.
Yeah. So the usual stuff. So I'm based in Belgium, and I mostly work in Asia, the Middle East, and most recently in the Balkans. I'm what we call a documentary photographer or photojournalist. There's sometimes confusion between the two practices. Maybe we can talk about it later.
Absolutely.
I mostly do work with NGOs, which is my main activity. I barely don't publish in the press or the magazines, which might change this year as I decided to push maybe that aspect of my work, because it's also connected to giving visibility to the issues that the beneficiaries of the NGOs are facing. I have an academic background, which I like to remind because it's important to me, and it's important also the way that I work. I used to be a researcher, a teaching assistant. I was professor at university. I've been doing a PhD research, been participating to many seminars and these very academic stuff. But it's very important to remind it, because it's also part of the way that I work. So I'm pretty convinced that one needs some ethnographic skills
Mhm.
to work on the subjects that we do, which are most of the subjects that I do are outside of my own culture. So I think it's pretty important to have this background. I studied philosophy, I studied history, I studied philosophy, I studied anthropology as well. So I think everything is connected, and it helps me when I quit my academic world.
Mhm.
I did some jobs here and there, and then I finally decided to be full-time documentary photographer. Started after the earthquake in Nepal,
Mhm.
2015. And then I've been engaging a lot with Asia, mostly Nepal, Mongolia, and Japan, which is a very special place for me. I started about 11 years ago to photograph in Japan. At that time, I was documenting the world of the geisha apprentices that we call Maiko. I published a book about that work with Les Éditions du Bec en l'Air, which is a very strong and very committed editor. And from Japan, then Mongolia, Nepal, also Middle East, Iraq, where I've been constantly going in and out for the last 3 years, 4 years. Now, with the pandemic, I'm kind of losing the the exact
Mhm.
amount of time. And then most recently, I started to work in the Balkans. Balkans because I had this very strange feeling that with the pandemic, it was very strange, to hear this stay home hashtag,
Mhm.
where I knew, because I was always interested in Balkans. I never found the time to go there, but I knew that for many people, it's impossible to stay home because you're just migrating and you live in squats in the forest in very hard conditions.
Mhm.
So these huge contradictions, the fact that 150,000 people were blocked between the borders at the beginning of the pandemic, not really knowing where to go, what to do, and what's going to happen to them, was something that was really striking to me. So I moved my work in Asia to Eastern Europe and the Balkans precisely, and I still have some projects also in Iraq.
Very interesting.
Indeed. I think I just noticed something, that we might be having some
Sync issues
on our end. Régis, you sound and look perfect, but I think we have a delay here in the studio.
Okay, but not for the people at home?
I don't know. If you're watching and there's a delay, let me know. But I think doesn't matter. We're not the focus of
we are not going to talk so much today, I don't think.
So let's jump into some questions.
Yeah, let's go through.
And because we are having some delay issues, I'm going to have Régis on the screen. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask you, we had 2 questions from the same person. Why did you choose to pursue your career as a photographer? This was the first question. And actually, I personally wanted to ask you that question. So can we start with that one?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we can. I think that I've always been a visual. When people ask me, I like to come back to my childhood and maybe when I was a teenager. My mother has been running a art gallery for more than 11 years in my hometown. And she was exhibiting painters that I really loved. It sounds a bit cliche to talk about painting when you're a photographer, but it's really what happened to me when I was a teenager. I've been seeing lots of painting from people like Permec, people like Roger Somville, painters like Paul Klein. And I was truly fascinated by this.
Mm-hmm.
If I had the talent, I would be a painter, honestly.
Yeah.
Maybe a painter. But the problem is that I'm not bad in drawing, but nothing really interesting comes out of my hands when I draw. So I decided to be more into photography. And when I was 12 years old, it's about the same time I got my first camera. It was a gift from my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to play, because there was really nothing serious. I was just, enjoying the results that I was getting from the shots. And it's many years after I was already engaged in my academic career. I was really committing to my studies. But then I felt that there was a need to come back to these visual experiences that I had, and that it was not enough to say the word or to express myself, to write IDs, statement, PhDs, memoirs, and many articles. It was not enough.
Mm-hmm.
I really needed to also express myself with something visual. And photography is something unique to me. I mean, according to my practice, the way I like to practice is that when you are an academic, you cannot really engage with your body and your body language.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly an intellectual work, which I truly love, and I don't want to say that I regret. I love it, but there was something missing, and in photography, I have this feeling that I can still engage a lot with my academic background, but also I can engage with my body, and for me, it's all about my body. I can really be there with the beneficiaries in the same conditions as they are. My positioning of my own body gives me frame opportunity. So it's all these body languages that I really was missing, and also these pure visual aspects of making photography. So sometimes you take a shot, you can read the light, you know the situation is there, you understand the issue, what the people are facing. But then there is this extra aesthetic layer that gives something, special to the pictures. And sometimes it's also chance. So
absolutely,
you have to integrate chance in your workflow. But to answer to the question, so this is really why. It's because very young, I was completely splashed with paintings, with photography also. And then after this kind of academic time in my life, I really wanted to go back to something visual that would keep my, let's say, my academic skills, that I could use them, but I would integrate also in this process my body, the fact to be there, to understand the people, to go there. Also, there's a lot of logistics involved in being a photographer. So all these aspects, I was really after them. So that's why I choose to pursue that career. I'm not sure I can use the word career. I'm not really comfortable with that word.
Maybe path is more suitable.
Yeah. Path, probably. Yeah. At some point, it's going to sound strange, but let's say it this way. At some point, it was the only thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah,
so I had no other options left.
There was no question for you. That was the way. Yeah.
Yeah, it was forward, and there was no left, right, backwards, maybe, tomorrow, after. It was pretty obvious, and yeah, it was obvious. There was something like a complete binding or mixing or blending of everything that I had been before, physically, because I've been doing a lot of sports. I was into a lot of mountaineering, climbing, cycling, expeditions, going to remote places. All these things have been suddenly blending and binding together with photography and also all these hundreds of books that I went through and research that I did. Everything has been connecting suddenly, and being a photographer was not really a chance. It was really, at that time it was really it was me.
Yeah, I see it more like you didn't have to choose to become a photographer. All the experiences and the things you went through life made you a photographer, and that was now your quest to continue, in a sense. So it's beautiful.
All right, I think let's jump to the next question, which seems very unrelated, but they were asked by the same person, so we thought we addressed them together. What kind of tools do you use in your post-processing? And I want to add a little bit to this question and ask you, in addition to that, how important it is, the post-processing workflow?
Well, it's an easy answer, this one, and a short one. I use a very simple universal software that all photographers know. Not the big one, but the very small one, the most simple version of this software. And post-production or post-processing, whatever the words, it's very limited in time. I do about nothing on my pictures. So what you see on the web is almost the raw files. So I do about nothing in terms of post-processing. The time I spend when I come back from assignment is more time spent on editing, which is something completely different. I mean, in my vocabulary, maybe you include post-processing.
Okay. Can you please explain?
But post-processing for me is more like, trying to adjust the pictures and, develop them as we develop the films. But I would say that 80% of my time, maybe 90% of my time is editing. Editing, writing, trying to really select the proper pictures that will serve the NGO and the beneficiaries, according also to their request and to what has been requested and asked to do. And then there's a little 10-15%, which is pure work, developing work on the pictures. And the more that I move onto that path, the less I do post-processing, because I'm maybe becoming better. I'm not the best. So the common friends we have, Cedric is an amazing post-processor. Is probably the best person I know for this in Europe.
Sorry, I'm laughing because as you said that, he was writing in the chat, he was saying he didn't explain what he means by editing. Make him do it. And then he started laughing.
But some people are really, really talented for post-processing. Me, I'm not. I try to I try to be good when I take the shot, which is not always easy. I'm not the best photographer for sure, but I'm good in my body language. So that's one of the things when I know that I can do things, that I can achieve framing. So most of my shots are more a question of relationship, of a physical relationship. Where am I standing physically when the things happen in the situation, when beneficiaries are there, when there's my subject there, and with that I know I can do things, and I'm starting to be better in terms of pure photography, the settings. But my settings are very, very simple, super simple. Most of the so I run also workshop with clients in different places on the planet, and most of the clients, when they ask me what are your settings, they are very surprised that it can be that simple and that you can get such pictures and results with such easy settings and very simple ones. But to answer the question to the editing that Cedric was asking, it's a bit long to explain here, but I try to go layer after layer. So that there's usually a first editing, which will result in having something that I call a material, which is usually for 2 weeks of work, nothing more than 500-600 pictures. And then from this first raw material or sum of pictures, then I will have a second layer, which probably will bring me down to 100. 100 max, and then the last one will be super selective, where I will deliver the 50, 60, sometimes 30 pictures that I need to deliver to the NGOs. So that's how I work. Of course, there are more techniques from jumping from one layer to the other one, but that's also part of the workshop that I give.
Yes. So for you, editing is more the journalism definition.
It's the culling. In wedding photography, it's called culling. So first you get 1,000 photos from one day of work, and then you bring it down to 500, then to 200, and then you have the key images for the
It's more
event.
about putting the final body of work together rather on working on
the individual photos.
Yep. Let's take another question. We don't want to spend too much time on those because there's a lot of
photos to look
beautiful photos to look at and stories to hear. This one is from Tim. How did you get into do you get into this line of work, and how do you decide where to travel to? I think you answered pretty much a little bit about the first part of the question, if you don't want to spend too much time on that. But how do you decide where to travel to?
It's a combination of two things. One is opportunities, which happen due to connections, and now because I'm starting to be known, so people know my work, they contact me. And the second thing is my own personal wish. I think that I had a chance to work in about all the places that I always wanted to go. And when you have the chance, and also sometimes it's work. So you put work together, you kind of push the doors and make things happen. Then you have this combination of request and personal desires. It happened to me for Japan. It happened also for Nepal and Mongolia. Mongolia quite a lot. It's a country I always wanted to visit, and Nepal as well. The Himalayas is something that really keeps on being fascinating for me. And Iraq also was really exactly the same. I had this very strong curiosity for the Middle East. When I was a teenager, we had all these events, the Iran-Iraq war, then the two Gulf wars. The Kurdish questions was something also very strange to me, that I wanted to understand, that I wanted to see on the ground. So there's been a combination of personal interest and work that had to be done over there.
Mm-hmm.
And the Balkans is the same. Balkans is really a very old dream of mine. I kind of always wanted to go there, but maybe it might give an opportunity for more questions about this, but maybe I wasn't feeling really ready to work so close to Europe. I think that one has to confess or admit or say that, working in Japan, working in Mongolia, working in Nepal, of course it's hard. You have some issues over there, and you have some difficulties to work there, but you have this exotic aspect of it, which is very dangerous for photography. Super dangerous, because if you do exotic pictures, for my work, it doesn't help. It's not good at all. Mm-hmm. It's good for travel photography, but not for the kind of work that I do. Mm-hmm. But still, it's something that you can, something that you can at least rely on. So it can be like a help from time to time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where you work in your own country, where you work when you work in Europe or close to Europe in the Balkans, it's photographing home, and that's more difficult for many different reasons. Although I was with populations from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Africa, Cameroon, Senegal, RDC. I'm still in Europe. I'm still very close to Europe. So I think that I wasn't. Honestly, that's the best answer I could say. I wasn't really ready yet to photograph the Balkans. No, of course, I do a lot of mistakes, and I wish I could do better every day. But I feel more comfortable to work on these issues. And also, I've learned many things in these last 6 years, and one of the things that there's always a cliche in your eyes, and I think it's a constant, permanent fight against all these visual cultures that we have. Mm-hmm. We didn't choose to have this visual culture, but we have these pictures in our brain. We have them in our eyes. We have these lines, these colors, these type of framing. So it takes a few years, I think, to take some distance from this, and therefore be maybe more efficient when you work closer and per se here in the Balkans. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a long answer to the second part of the question, but once again, it's a combination of personal interest. I think that you need to keep this. You need to keep this personal interest in the subject, because once you will be there, it's going to be pretty hard. Especially if you go to conflict zones. Mm-hmm. It's going to take a lot of you. What you're going to see is going to be pretty hard also. So if there's not a big part of your soul, your heart, your spirit that is not driven by the country, the people, the subject, it's going to be pretty painful. And I don't believe that there's something good that can come out of such a painful process. So you need to have a personal interest when you do an assignment. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. So we have another one by Juno. When out in the field, what in specific are you looking for to shoot? What are the things that you notice? And I know for a fact Juno will be very glad to hear from you, because he was really passionate about starting his own. He's a young photographer, very young photographer, and he wants to travel. So he needs all the tips.
I think I'm going to start with this. So most of the time I'm embedded with the NGOs team, which are the field, usually the field staff, the field teams, the field officers. the outreach teams, things like this. So my perspective is driven by them. Then comes the work with the NGOs, where, of course, I do some preparation before.
Mm-hmm.
I know the kind of details that I will search after, but all this depends on the subject that you do.
Exactly.
So these are very universal or general rules that probably are not very interesting to hear, because it's just pure logic. You are requested to do something for someone, you try to understand what the someone wants,
Mm-hmm.
and then you try to do it. But then on another level, I think it would be more interesting to answer like this. I don't look for something specific.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not searching for something that I would love to do in advance.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, I really try to dive into the situation. So I really try to be completely melting, if I can say,
Mm-hmm.
in the environment, in the relation with the people, with the history, what's going on. Usually try to grab some vocabulary as much as I can. I'm not too bad with languages, so I usually try to, as quickly as possible, to speak, that kind of basic universal language that will get you closer or maybe more intimate with what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So this is usually my way of working. I don't try to, in advance, have boxes that I would, just tick them, check, did this.
Makes sense.
Which, to my understanding, it's personal. I think is a bit pushing the reality.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I'm requested to work on desertification in Mongolia. I will really try to spend as much time as I can with the families in the steppe in Mongolia and really understand what it means to wake up in this desertification issue, this relation with the animals. You see them slowly starving, because that's really what they are facing. You see them slowly being concerned. On 4 or 5 days that you spend in the peak of the summer, you will really see the herders starting to be very stressed, starting to be worried. So in that case, I will myself start to be stressed and to be worried. And then, the more you get closer to what's going on, to what's happening, you suddenly start to see what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And not what I see, me, as a Westerner, as a foreigner. And so when you get to that level, usually you start to do good work. Because you start to see how they see, what they see. You start to react with the things that makes them reacting. Because, it's, as I said prior, it's so easy to, let's keep on talking about Mongolia, but it's so easy to go there and make pictures about Mongolia, make these cliche pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, they are beautiful. I have nothing against them, but it's not my work. My work is really, to address all these problems, these difficulties, the challenges of desertification, of, overgrazing, which is connected, of access to school for their children, the incomes that are becoming lower and lower, the transition they're making to the cities, the fact that during the winter they have to separate, and the man will stay in the steppe with the animals, and the woman will stay with the children because they have to go to school. All these kinds of social problems and consequences about the desertification. That's the kind of things that you will start to see after some moment. So it's once again it's a long answer, but of course you could be. Of course, I know that there are things that are, sexy or selling, and if I see them, I will make the pictures. But it's really not the way I work. The way I work is as simple as being there with the people.
Mm-hmm.
They move, I move. If they sleep, I sleep. If they don't eat, I don't eat. If they are under the sun, if they are worried, I'm under the sun, I get worried. And I think to me, it's the only way to work deeply. And it has one aspect, is that you need time.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a lot of time. And I'm so sorry, and I'm so unhappy sometimes when I see that many colleagues work faster and faster. And I know that they are not happy with that. It's just because that they have to work faster. They're not going to get paid for 2 weeks of work. They have to do the job in 2 or 3 days. So they do it. And it's really a challenge for them. It's really hard. So
I was going to ask, how long are you on the field?
Sorry?
How long are your expeditions or your projects with these people?
It depends. I usually try to make it as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So if it can be 2 weeks, then it's better.
Yeah.
If it can be 2 weeks, it's even better.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I mean, sometimes you ask a question and you don't get the answer that you expect, but I think that was a beautiful answer that you gave.
Yeah.
Embedding yourself in the story, becoming a part of it, really tell the story of the people rather than influencing it or having a pre-visualization of what you're going to get. I think that's very, very important to understand.
I actually, it was because you talked before that your background is an academic background, and you, I guess, have a mindset of approaching things a bit scientifically, and the work that you do with photography reminds me a lot of the classical work that ethnographers did, which is really embedding themselves into different cultures and trying to become one in order to understand and be able to, get to the deep end of how these people actually have evolved and live, and what are the things that drive them, and what are the things that are challenges to them. So I see a lot of that background of you in the way that you approach photography. And I do know that we live in a very fast world, but it's very refreshing to see someone like you that really puts effort and importance on taking the time for these things to come organically rather than push them just because we need to get the job done.
Yeah, but it's a tough choice, because the photographic industry doesn't work like this. It works super fast, faster and faster. So what I do is a challenge. It's a super risk. It's very risky. Mm-hmm. Many people go on in the field for 3, 4, 5 days, and then they quickly publish. I couldn't do it. As you said, I have this very ethnographic approach. Yes, why not? It's just that these ethnographers. We're talking about Lévi-Strauss. We're talking about Franz Boas, which is probably one of the biggest. For me, Manilovsky as well, Tim Ingold, Philippe Descola, all these names. They were taking 20 years, 20 years, just to understand how was the family links between the people that they were living with. Or they were taking 20 years to understand what are all the symbols of cooking and the kitchen and the ingredients. Or they were taking 20, 30, 40, 50 years, all their life, just to understand why these people believe in this. Or why do they use these types of colors on the architectures or on their clothing. So I think it takes time. It's very unusual to say that. Even you would be surprised to see that some of the World Press Photo Awards, which doesn't remove anything from the greatness of their work and their pictures, but some of these people they work on 3 or 4 or 5 days. So it's crazy fast, and I don't believe that you can access something in 3 or 4 days. It takes a bit more. What takes also a bit more, you were asking me how long I try to spend in the field. To be very precise, I should say that I try to be between 10 and 15 days, but then I try to come back. By example, on the reindeer herders in the taiga, so we are in the north of Mongolia, I have been there 4 times. So I spent 4 stays with them. I went there in the winter, I went there in the summer, I went there in spring, I went there in autumn. It's also by repeating the journey with them that you go deeper and deeper and deeper. Once again, there's no academic, ambition here. We're still talking about photography, but I think that photography needs to have that kind of ambition as well. And because I see too many works that have been done, to my understanding, too fast, too quickly, I think it's really, really needed. It's super needed. Otherwise, we're going to go to a path where I think that many people that are being photographed will not recognize themselves. And that's something big.
I understand your point, and it's a very, very valid. I'm happy that there's still people that take a different approach, even though in this fast-moving world.
Yeah, sometimes it's more important to get the story rather than just to chase the work. And, it takes somebody to do it. It's hard, as you mentioned. We're not trying to take away from the people who work traditionally, but,
No, of course. Once again, my colleagues do brilliant stuff on very short, amount of time, and they are with the same restrictions. They have to go fast because simply they will not be paid for.
And I have to say, you're being very humbled. I mean, I looked at your photos, and they're very, very beautiful.
Yes.
So, and that's very kind of you to be that way. But
they're good.
I think your work speaks for yourself. For itself.
Yeah.
And we did get a few follow-up questions, but I felt like maybe we also should be a little bit economic with time, because I know you have a short window, and so I don't know, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to give you the follow-ups, or do you want to tell us a little bit about the photos, and then we get back to the questions later?
Yeah, we can browse a few pictures if you want, and then I can jump on the next question. I think what's interesting is the interaction.
Yes.
And the question. So
I think because a lot of the photos themselves are gonna bring up stories as well. These are the photos that you took in.
This picture, I was talking about painting at the beginning while I was introducing myself and this incredible influenced by my mother and her art gallery. This is really what we call, the Flemish paintings, these kinds of lights that you find in these very Belgian painters. It really is completely embedded in my eyes. When I see that kind of scenery, I have the impression to be visiting a museum and to see a painting. So in a way, to me, it's an easy shot because everything is there. It's I'm watching the pictures as I talk to you, but everything is there. It's really it's super Flemish in my eyes.
It is beautiful.
So we are in Mongolia here. It's with the reindeer herders. To access the winter camps, you have to walk for 2 days, and you have to spend one night in the taiga without any tent, anything. We just had some good down sleeping bags. But it's a very special moment and a very special time. The snow was pretty deep. It was kind of hard for the reindeer because I didn't say, but you need to ride a reindeer for 2 days to reach the winter camps. So it's pretty hard conditions. Most people have this very glamorous image of a photojournalist or documentary photographer. They just see, the hostels and the traveling and the fun and the planes. But there's a lot of logistics. And some of these logistics, you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you will be in deep, deep trouble. In that case, we're talking about -25, -30 degrees during the night. We had no tents. So you need to know what you're doing. You need to know what you're doing with your gear. You need to be well prepared. So that's why also I was saying that my life also as a, let's say, a sportive or someone doing a lot of sports, this is where it's also binding and blending with with photography, because part of the subject that I work, which is pastoralism and nomadism and migration, part of the subjects that I choose to work also in the Himalayas, if you don't have this aspect of knowing what to do, how to behave, and what kind of gear you need, you're going to fail. Not because you're a bad photographer, but because you're a bad mountaineer or because you're a bad logistician.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's also part of the work. I mean, it has to be said. Salgado that everyone knows.
Mm-hmm.
When he's going on a project, the logistic part is huge. It's big. He's taking this very seriously, very, very seriously. And I think he's right. You cannot go to extreme environment with just your camera. It's not enough.
Definitely not. You have to. It's much more than just a photography job. It's an expedition. Like, imagine someone going to the North Pole to explore new areas. You have to be ready for what the Earth is going to bring to you, which is very harsh in many cases.
That's the behind the scene of this picture. So we see all white. There's an aesthetic, of course. There's a subject. There's this guy, which is trying to lead the way and to find the best path suitable to reach his winter camps. We are in a very remote place in the north of Mongolia. We are something like 20 kilometers away from Russian border in Siberia. But just to make this picture, whatever the frame, whatever the quality of the shot, just to make it, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a physical commitment. You have to be there. It's freezing cold. So that's also something that I like. This physicality.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say that?
Yeah.
The physicality of photography is something that I really search also. Kani Amadi was asking earlier why you choose also this career. I think that it's also one of the aspects and one of my answers. I also choose because I knew that there would be these aspects that I personally love. Being a climber, being a mountaineer, being outdoor is something that I truly enjoy, love. I have gained a lot of experience. I have probably something like 30 years of mountaineering behind me. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I've learned a few things to be comfortable with these kinds of situations. But that's also, it's part of the work. And people who go to Iraq, people who go to Nepal, people who go to Brazil, to India, it's part of the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only photography. There's also this physicality. It's part of the work. You're going to sleep badly. You're going to move. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to eat differently. Sometimes amazingly great. Sometimes absolutely disgustingly bad. You're going to take a lot of emotions. Emotions are going to be thrown in your face. It will go through you. And even if you work with a fixer, the fixer will swallow a big part of it. And I also want to talk about them because it's a subject that we don't talk enough. It's the fixer, the people we call the fixer.
Yes.
But even with the fixer, taking his or her part, you will still get a huge emotional kind of drift and channeling through you, and that's going to be physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be really physical. It's like running. Sometimes when you photograph Yazidi. Just after the genocide, you meet them in a camp, you interview them, you interview the community, you interview very young girls who have been captured and enslaved and freed by chance. It's going to take a lot of your energy. You're going to come back late at night and you're going to be like if you run a complete marathon. That's the picture, thank you. But if you take these kinds of portrait that you really take the time just to make this picture, to give you an idea, I took 2 days. So I've been really working on long term with them. I didn't want it to come, take a few shots and bye. It's not what I wanted to do. So you need to get them, get their trust. You need to really understand what they went through. You need to be ready to listen to that. And also you need to have their agreement, because by telling their story, they will go through it again. And that's going to be painful for them. So you need to measure the readiness and if you can do it, if ethically it's correct, if people really understand that you're going to ask them to kind of live again what they went through. And this young lady, she ran to hell, really. She ran to hell. She barely escaped during the bombing, the last bombing of Mosul, just before the freeing of the city. She got injured in one leg. She's been limping. She barely made it to some soldiers from the Golden Division that rescued her. She was kept another 3 or 4 months by the Iraqi army, just protecting her. She couldn't speak after she came back. She lost the ability to talk. And then her family found her and they reunited. When I met her, she was with her family since only 4 months, and she was only starting to speak again. So you see, that's the kind of context. Even me, myself, by telling the story right now, I can still feel the emotion. I can still feel it, and I know it's taking on me. But once again, me doesn't matter. What matters is her. But that was to answer your question and to say once again that I'm sorry to repeat, but this physicality, this physical part is often neglected. Mm-hmm. And it's part of photography, as well as the ethnographic skills, as well as the logistic, as well as the experience, and as well, of course, as just being a human. Just that. Just being a human.
Absolutely.
Just feeling, understanding if people want to talk, and not stealing, their disaster or their tragedy. That would be the worst case scenario that, because I'm a photographer, I'm a photojournalist, I have all the rights, people have the right to know. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Just being human and just being yourself and going slowly and just understanding. And if people say no, they say no. It means that they don't want to go again to this shit. And they're right, and they've it's kind of a protection also. So it's also all these aspects that are very important in the way I work.
I think it blends very well with the other theme of who you are in terms of being comfortable with hiking and being in these extreme conditions. By training yourself to be comfortable with that, you're comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the same physical pain that one goes through when being in harsh conditions, I think it relates to the emotional pain that one has to go through when one really connect to people in really suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And we all felt it. Everybody who's watching, both of us right here, when you're describing the story of the girl, we all felt it deep down in our soul. And a lot of people don't want to have that feeling because everybody is looking for convenience and
feeling comfortable.
It's the same thing as the liking to be in an air-conditioned room, but for your feelings. And I think this work and these stories of these people should not go unheard of and undocumented. And
I think this episode is really good, like having you here. A few episodes back, we got the question from someone asking if photojournalism is still relevant today. And I think us talking to you and your stories and this, it just tells why it's so important still to this work, why is it so important, right?
Yes.
It's relevant because we need connection. It's a way to connect, to connect destinies, to connect tragedies, to connect issues. If we talk, and I see a picture here about pastoralism, so it's once again in reindeer herders and in the taiga. But I think it's probably more important than ever before to stay connected. I'm not talking about the internet stuff or these connections. I'm talking about, as you said, bringing stories together. And if you bring stories that you've been, living them instead of making them, which is a big difference. People will feel it. People will see it. And then you're making something like making the world closer and making societies closer. You were talking also about the fact that, of course, one of the aspects of the work is being fine with the often situation where you are miserable. You are miserable because you know that you don't do a good work. You're miserable because you don't sleep well. You're miserable because it's crazy cold outside, or you're miserable because what you see in front of you is just the worst of what humans can be to each other. But even in you know these scenarios or these situations, I think it's very important, and that's where that's another skill that we don't talk enough. But you have to be solid. I'm not saying that I'm a Superman. I'm weak like all of us. I have my own emotional weaknesses. I'm just like anyone, you know, on this planet. But you have to be solid in your commitment. Because even if you take this, even if you are really bad during the night, that you wake up, you still hear their voices, you still hear the witnesses that you heard during the day, during your interviews. Even with that, I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't matter. What matters is the beneficiaries. What matters is the people you photograph. What matters is their stories, not yours. It's not the behind the scene. It's not the making of. It has no importance. That's why you really have to stand strong and really be solid. That's the word I use. You know, in French, we say being solid. Once again, it doesn't mean to be a superhero, but it just means that keeping the focus where it needs to be. And it's sometimes, you know, something that I see in the industry that I'm not really happy or comfortable with the suddenly talking about the photojournalist or the photographer. I mean, come on, we come back to the countries where we're born. We're usually born in Western countries. We are privileged people. We have the privilege to travel and to do that kind of work. So it's a waste of time and a waste of communication material. I think that it's really important to keep the focus on the work, on the stories, where it needs to be, on the people, on the beneficiaries. When we talk about NGOs, that's something that I really wanted also to share tonight and to say clearly, because like with the fixer, it's, you know, people sign the assignment with their name only. But to my understanding, if we look at the reindeer people, we're still in Mongolia here. To my understanding, if you don't have a translator, if you don't have a logistician, if you don't have someone who's really helping you to understand maybe faster or deeper the subject in a short amount of time, the least is to, you know, put his or her name. If you go to my website, you will see that all the subject that I work on, I clearly mention all my fixes. Because they are clearly part of the work and clearly part of every picture. Of course, I'm the photographer. I'm the one taking the shot. But if they are not there with me, I'm nothing.
And in some cases, would you say that they are your connection to some stories? When we're talking about the fixers, do you learn?
My companion.
Okay, but so you find the stories through your personal research or through the NGOs, and then they put you in contact through the fixers?
That they have special subjects to address and that they want to cover or document. And then I respond to that.
Yes.
And fixers are usually people who work around or with, or maybe sometimes directly a staff member of the NGOs. I did a national campaign against domestic violence. And during that assignment, which I did in 2 stays, so I worked 4 weeks on this, I was working with one fixer, and she was a member of the NGO. She was a staff of the NGO. And, you know, it was pretty hard. We've been interviewing women who went to extreme domestic violence. Their children went to domestic violence. pretty stuff stories. So she took a lot. She took a lot on herself. And honestly, I can say that on this project, she was really the one. She was the one on the front line, and me, I was making the pictures, but she was really the one on taking the lead. I had the impression that I was following. Although I was the one asking the question, I was the one interviewing, I was the one guiding the work, I was the one selecting the places to take the pictures with the survivors of domestic violence. But honestly, in that specific work, my fixer has been amazing. She should be the one credited, not me. We're still viewing pictures on I just quickly jump on the pictures, but if you can come back, there's one picture that I would like to talk about.
Yes.
It's a man. You see it. It's inside a teepee in the reindeer herd. It's a bit before.
I think this one.
Yeah, this one. This one is special because it could be better. It's not the best shot ever, but the moment was the best. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, sometimes you take the shots, but you have the impression that that's the whole situation that is really pushing the trigger. It's not you. If you're really completely connected to what's happening, in here we are, just to give some context, it's a 63 years old shaman. So she's a lady, a member of the Duka. The Duka are one of the minority in Mongolia, and they are the reindeer herders. Mm-hmm. The Duka is their true names, and they are wrongly called the Tsatan, mainly by tourists and especially by Mongolians. But the true ethnographic name of this minority is Duka. Mm-hmm. And this Duka lady, I requested to be there if ever she was having a ritual, a shamanistic ritual. And so she called, I went, and she started to warm up the drum. You see this big drum on the left of the picture.
Yes.
And then, she was warming the drum. She was starting to be in a first, let's say, in a first stage of a trance and connection. And then at some moment, she did a very sudden look towards the up of the teepee, which we call hurt in their language. Mm-hmm. And I took the shot as she was moving her head. I felt something was happening, and then the shot came out like if you were holding a gun and you suddenly you shoot but you're not very sure that it's you. It's another way again. I said it for my fixer that sometimes they are so important that they are the one who should be credited. And in these very special moments that you live, and this one is one of them, is it really you taking the picture? Of course, I'm physically the one pressing the trigger, but something more, something that's being, in the whole situation is suddenly taking you. You understand, you feel it, and there comes the picture. It would be the best way to say it.
Mm-hmm. It's like a reaction more than an action.
Yeah. Sometimes it's more an action. You kind of frame. You take your time. But sometimes it's more like something is happening, and it's happening to more and more to my pictures. I'm less and less there when I take these kinds of pictures. I'm stealing the word of Hélène Grimaud. Hélène Grimaud is a very famous pianist, mm-hmm. And during an interview, she was asked, what's happening when you play a concerto, when you play a piece of piano? And she said, at best, I'm not there.
Yeah, you're in trance and state of flow, which it's very interesting.
It's not a trance, but I'm starting to understand what she really meant by saying this. I'm really starting to understand it, because there are many of my pictures, not all of them, of course, but many and more that really are being shot like this.
You reminded me of a quote. It was a letter from I'm so bad with names, I won't remember who it was. But if you look it up, it's the mother of modern dance.
Oh, yeah.
Wrote a letter to a friend of hers telling her about this specific phenomena, is that you're not allowed to judge your work. You're just
only
channeling it. So as an artist, you should just let it go through you and let the other people
judge it.
Yeah,
or like
because if you
enjoy
judge it and you stop yourself, you prohibit the world from experiencing that.
It, yeah.
So I think it's an important point to touch on, that sometimes you don't have to be so judgmental about, because you can get caught in the aesthetics of a photo if you as a photographer, but more than a photographer, you're trying to tell the story here.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I think some of these shots are more to the catching the eye, like this one, for example. And but I feel like as a body of work, when you put it together, sometimes it's a reason you have something on the cover that is attractive, but then once you go inside, you hear the full and complete story. Trying to see how we can, because this is really important and it's very inspiring, but it can be a bit daunting for somebody who's a beginner and watching this program and wanting to follow in your steps and thinking, how would I put a whole body of work together, especially to Yuno's question, and when he was asking about what to look for. And I think it's what you said exactly, but at the same time, if you do capture some shots that you want to have more attractive to the work, because that's the world we live in, you need to bring people in somehow to tell them what you really want to tell them. I think
I was listening to your words, and maybe I would like to have a last answer to this question.
Yes.
To what do you need to search? I would say to yourself.
What do you want to? He's asking you.
Oh, you're asking me?
No. I'm giving an extra answer.
Okay.
He's saying, look for yourself.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Sorry, I got lost in translation. We are like three ways here. Yes, it's true.
Just yourself, just being yourself, just being sincere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also think what you say is a bit daunting at the beginning, talking about these big words of like that sometimes you are not there when you take kind of these magical shots that is the moment it speaks to be taken. I think that also comes with experience, right? Like someone that is just very new to the work and to the workflow and to the type of photography, those moments are not going to come as easy as someone that's been on the field for 10, 15 years. And it's a bit of an intuition that one builds as a skill as well for this specific, very important and transient moments that should be captured. So only, to work on it.
It's the consequences of it's a consequence of field work.
Yeah.
I only believe in field work. Field. Being on the field, taking pictures, being there, being with them. And then I believe also in this very minimalistic approach in taking the pictures. If your logistic, I know that I talk about logistic, but let me be clear on this one. If your logistic is too sophisticated, you're going to miss something.
Makes sense.
So you have to really almost be in the same conditions. Almost. I'm happy that you on this picture. Maybe you can go back.
This one.
Back one more. You see that's we were talking about editing, and Cedric will be happy. You have two different editing, which are completely the opposite. The first picture, let's say that I select this picture. What I'm showing here is a Yazidi mother who is holding her son, And to make the story short, when the Sinjar Valley has been invaded by Daesh soldiers, they had to flee. This little boy was missing, and she found him in a trash bin, left dead. And so she took this little boy. She said, well, it's over. And then it happened that he was alive. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying here is that this is the story. You can show this. You can edit this picture for sure. And you will see, all what the mother went through. And you will see in the look of the little boy, what he went through also, and in this kind of movement going backwards, that he's not going to trust anyone that easy. And on the second picture, you can see also, if you edit the second one, it's still the same story. This little boy was still left for dead in a trash bin. He's been recovered by his mom, who was thinking that he was dead. Fortunately, he was not. Mm-hmm. And now, they together.
And they're happy.
It's not the only child in the family, but these two, there's more than this usual, mother and child connection. They kind of lost each other, and that was a very close, and close call and a tragedy. But at least these two, they managed. So you see, in the editing, you can go in very different directions. You can choose to show this, and I think that joy, being together, happiness is also part of life. Mm-hmm. It's also part of their life, even with the genocide that they went through. They still smile, they still laugh, they still love. You can show also the first picture, mm-hmm. because that's what they went through. So you'd see it once again, it's a matter of being true to the reality. There's not only tragedy, there's not only suffering, there's also joy, there's also happiness. And if you only select systematically and always publish and always show this kind of dark, gray, sorrow, tragedy, Judeo-Christian suffering, mystic of life and all the situation, of course, it's correct, because a part of the reality is like this, mm-hmm. and this is why we fight against. But I believe that you have to show also the other part. And it has to be part of the story. Because otherwise you're not true, and you are slipping to this kind of also paradigm, mm-hmm. that I don't really like. If you're a photojournalist, you have to show despair, tears, bombing, bloods, and people crying. Of course, once again, it's necessary. There are situations where you need to show that. But if you only do that, if you only publish that kind of work, if you hyper-focus on that kind of commitment, and it takes a lot of commitment, of course, to be that kind of photojournalist, you're missing something. And the industry is so focused on the suffering. For that, I think that we are super Judeo-Christian. It's the Christ. It's Jesus Christ suffering on the cross. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're still in that visual, in that aesthetic, and also in that symbolic, that body, the suffering body. Once again, it's the painting. We're still in that. And so I want to be clear. I don't want to make wrong or confusion about this. Of course, it's very clear that when there's a war, it is our duty to show the atrocities and the extreme unhuman aspects of any war.
Absolutely.
But you have to also include, other aspects, because we're not living in a non-stop war, in a non-stop crying world. We're also laughing. We're also having fun. We're also playing music. We're also meeting each other. We're also loving each other. There is always a good aspect of this story that has to be told.
It's the strength of the human spirit. Yeah, humans have been struggling throughout
Forever.
history, and they still prevail. And to see it in crystallized moments like this is a very important part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's why I selected, these two pictures, because I wanted to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Something very important for me.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Many people and the public have the impression that if you don't do that kind of extreme situation photography, you're not a photojournalist. It's wrong. They are amazingly great photographers who never did any conflict or anything like that, and they are amazing person and amazing photographers, and they brought discrete issues on the table and in the media, in the news.
Mm-hmm.
This is my commitment about pastoralism. Pastoralism is usually classified in travel photography.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the photography about pastoralism can be identified or classified in travel photography, which once again is fine with me. But pastoralism is really one of the biggest disaster in all Central Asia. All these pastoralist and nomadic populations, they go through really hard times. I talked about desertification already, but the incomes also, access to medical care, access to society, just simple as that. So the pastoralism is really this kind of forgotten subject. And if it's taken seriously, it's usually photographed as a travel picture with a lot of cliché, exotic aspects. And it's fun. It's being a nomad. Wow, it's nice. Riding on a horse. But you don't know that this guy has been riding on a horse just to find a doctor, because maybe someone was dying, or you don't know that he's been riding on a horse because he had to sell his motorbike, and he's thinking constantly during the whole ride how he's going to pay for the school fees, and he doesn't even know how he's going to make it to pay for the winter. Mm-hmm. That's another story about pastoralism, and that's the way I've been trying to photograph this.
Yes,
Beautiful.
very nice to see that, typical things that not a lot of people think they might be an issue or have problems. Some people might think, oh yeah, there are parts of the world that they decide to be nomads, but they don't know more about that. And then bringing up the stories of why those people are struggle, how do those people struggle, and telling their stories is very important.
Revealing that it's not a decision, but it's a circumstance.
Yeah.
But that nomadism is a terrible subject. I think it's a subject where you have the biggest gap between the pictures you can make and the reality. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the biggest gap, because you can have these very romanticized pictures, in the steppe with a nice sunset, the hills. Mm-hmm. But when you really understand what's going on, it's of course this beauty exists. Mm-hmm. For sure it exists, and Mongolia is one of the most beautiful places I saw, with the Himalayas, probably. Mm-hmm. But the social reality is something different.
Definitely.
Do you want to address some more of the questions while we are looking at the images?
So, I was just, if you stop at this picture, mm-hmm. It's a very old lady. We are in Enkawa, which is the Christian area of Erbil. Mm-hmm. So we are in Iraqi Kurdistan. It's during the referendum of the independence. And, this is more a pure photojournalistic picture, where you try to show the importance of this referendum, that it was one of the first. It's not really the first. There has been a referendum before, but this one was somehow special, where people could express themselves about the possibility of being independent as a Kurdish people in Iraq. And she was simply looking for her name mm-hmm. on the list of the voters, which historically, of course, spoke to me quite a lot. I had these very strong pictures about the end of apartheid and when for the first time all South Africans could vote for the president, who became Nelson Mandela. And so I had all these historical stuff, completely exploding into me when I saw this lady, and I understood what she was doing. So that's more pure photojournalism with a strong historical aspect, which sometimes is very needed and important to bring, because what happened in Iraqi Kurdistan was really a historical moment, and it's not happening all the time. It was something probably like a shift in the whole area. I'm not a big specialist of this Middle East, but it's still a place I love. I have many Kurdish people that I call friends. I'm very close to them. And it's something really special that happened during that moment. And to photograph that kind of historical moment is something probably unique. Maybe it's happening 4, 5, 6 times during your career. So that was an important picture for me to show also.
Very nice. I really like all of these pictures. They're always something that when I look at them, I always want to know what's happening here.
Yeah.
I want to know what's the story, what's going on. And I think that's what's important when you're doing this kind of work, is to intrigue, is to draw the people in to what's going on really. And that's beautiful.
That's why we write also captions. Captions in that kind of work, is very important. I have a friend, I really love her work. She's Laurence G. She's a French photojournalist.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always very inspired by her work. And also I know that she takes so much care and so much focus and being so sharp on writing the captions, because it's a big part of our work, really big part. Because as you said, sometimes we deliberately edit a picture that will leave a part of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Because visually it's interesting. There's maybe like an open space where you can go. It's attractive. But then on the other hand, you need to write the caption. And caption writing is really an essential part also of the skills that you need to master, and of the production. You need to write captions, and it's something specific. It's not just saying, it was there and this is the name of the lady, and you have to find always a way to summarize the situation which goes behind the picture and still include the picture in 1, 2, 3 sentences maximum. So it's really something specific and very strong skills that you need to have also.
That's the way that I see it really when it comes to documentary and specifically photojournalistic work. When if I'm looking at photos, usually the photo that will catch my eye will lead me to look at the story caption, and then the caption will give me that context of what the story is about. And usually, as you said, it's direct to the point, and then you follow through on the article, and then you learn more about the whole story if there is an attached article. Sometimes it's just a photo with a caption. And in my head, sometimes, because of the power of photography and the power of visuals, a caption with a photo is as strong as a full article.
I mean, it's such a big communication effort. You have to be such a good communicator, both with visuals and with words, in order to make that to be so impactful, right? Like, you want to have an image that draws you in, and then you have to have a caption or a text that goes with it that is concise enough but to the point and not leaving anything behind. I love communications, and I see this as such a skillful task to actually bring these two things together, and it's the same person doing it, which is the photojournalist. So we sometimes forget about that part as well.
Yes. All right. We have a question. Let's switch gears a little bit and maybe see if you can tell us what has been the most difficult situation you have been in?
Huh. I think there's an obvious answer. It was recently in the Balkans. It has been the most difficult situation because of the emotions. And I'm going to clarify. So I was embedded with an outreach team of one NGO, and we were visiting squats where people from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, from Iran, they stay there waiting to cross the borders and try to go through Croatia and just enter Europe. And it has been the most difficult situation simply because of this. All these young fellows from Pakistan, by example, they have the same age as my boys, and especially my big boys. I have a son, he's 17, and I met a few of these guys who were exactly the same age, and that was really hard for me. Really hard for me because I could see my son. And so every time I was trying to make a picture, it was, of course, I did the work, and I said to you, you need to be solid. So I was really solid and doing the work, and I did some good pictures over there. But it was very, very personally and intimately, it was very hard for me. Very hard for me to go through this, because I didn't understand suddenly why young boys full of dreams and expectations, very bright lights in their eyes, why they suddenly had to go through this shit, being considered as less than human, in physically hard conditions, psychologically. I don't know where to start with if we need to talk about this. Having scabies all over their bodies. Most of the migrants that I met had scabies. So when you see that, and this is a picture that really speaks by itself. And this guy was older. It's a gentleman from Afghanistan. He's 34. But I also met, he was in the same squad that they were 16, 17 years old, 18 years old, young boys. It's mostly men who do this migration from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, from Iran also. So that was the most, so far, the most difficult situation, probably with the time I spent and the work I did with the Yazidi community, documenting their situation and after the genocide. That was probably the two hardest situation that I was. Another one that I think about quite clearly also is this work we did on domestic violence. I say we because I want to once again emphasize on the work of my fixer. She's been amazing, and there's been time when we were receiving the story of the survivor, and I just don't even know how she managed to keep on talking and interacting. And I remember that there are some days we were so shocked that we just couldn't speak after the interview. I was barely saying bye, see you tomorrow. It's just it was too much. When you hear that a woman, a mother of children, that the husband has been trying to strangle the lady while she was breastfeeding, the last one. What can you still say after that? I mean, you just take it, you record it, you do the pictures, you're solid, you're professional, but at the end of the day, you're happy to be in a bed, and you just don't know how you're going to spend the night because there's just too much. And this picture also, about it's one of the trail that the migrants use to cross the border between Bosnia Herzegovina and Croatia. And you know that when they decide to cross, they use smugglers. you know that you don't know what's going to happen. And I met a young guy. He was 17. He went through what we call violent pushback. So what the Croatian police is doing, and officially they say they don't, but I can tell you for sure that they do, is that when they capture people who crossed the border, instead of going to legal procedure, which is the official legal way and what they should do if they respect basic human rights and basic conventions between members of the EU, instead of doing this, they beat them. And the guy I met, he had a broken rib. He barely could still breathe and walk. So when you see that, it's really you don't know what's going to happen to them. You don't know what's going to happen to them. You don't know how the smugglers will behave. The smugglers they try to have something like a success rate. Mm-hmm. They're being paid only if they succeed to put you through the border. So usually they will take a huge number of people. They will use a part of the group, which is usually a big part. They will use it as a trick, so that the police from Croatia will go after this big group. Mm-hmm. And then they will go with another smaller group that they usually succeed and manage to put through the border. And they just don't care. But we're talking, the people who will fail. We're talking about these violent pushback. We're talking about families who've been, spending a lot of money to reach the Balkans. We're talking also about, huge psychological drama and distress. So it's all of this situation, and specifically, once again, to answer the question, that was the most difficult situation for me, because being a father, having my big son who was the same exact age of these guys, it was really big for me. But physically, this extreme environment, the logistic, it's okay. I've learned also to be miserable. I've learned to be cold. I've learned to be starving. I've learned to have pain or to be stressed or to be worried. But that's fine. It's part of the work. And once again, I think there's nothing to say about it. What matters is their stories, is the beneficiary. It's not mine. But in terms of difficult situation, that's if you ask me the question, that's the one I would say. That's the guy who went through a violent pushback, the picture that we see. He was just trying to recover. And you could see that's why I took this picture and I took it this way. You could see that clearly he wasn't there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What these psychological trauma often we don't show, because it's of course it's not visual. How can you show psychological trauma? But maybe this picture was an attempt to show the consequences of being treated less than human when you just try to cross to cross a border and just to have a better life. And we're supposed to have in Europe these legal process for asylum seekers, and I'm so shocked that one of the members of the EU is behaving like shit, because there's no other words, Yes. So that kind of consequences when you have all these dreams, these expectations, it's like a disintegration of who you are. And these young boys, some of them have been traveling for 2-3 years. And they slowly disintegrate. So that's what this picture is all about. There's no face anymore. You cannot see them. This picture is more about the living conditions. But this one, you cannot see his face because there's no face anymore.
Yeah,
the cost powerful. Of migration might be his identity, and at some point that's all they have. It's all they have left. I hear sometimes, it makes me so upset, these people, these people, they hold on being Iranian, they hold on, they want to stay Pakistani, they want to stay Afghani and so on. But, when you go to these migration for 2-3 years, that's everything that you still have left. It's everything you have. It's who you are. This young mother, she's an Hazara from Daikundi in Afghanistan. And of course, she wants to stay who she is, you know. She lost everything. She has no home anymore. She has no friends anymore. She has no origins anymore. So of course, she will keep on being, you know, herself. She will keep her beliefs. She will keep the way she dresses. She will keep the way she educates her daughter. She has 3 daughters, this lady.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, I mean, this kind of speech, when you hear them in Europe, oh, these people, they should adapt, they should become, I don't know, they should become more like us. I mean, it's such a misunderstanding of what they went through. And that at some point, you know, everything that they will have in their pocket is their identity. And they will do everything they can just to keep this.
And a part of it as well is who you've been on. Like, we think of our identity as our life experience, but these people who go through these conditions and they stay traveling for years sometimes it takes them more than a year to get to their destination. That becomes also a part of who you are. You're that person who's been through this horrific journey and been mistreated by so many different people and nationalities and custom officers along the way. And then you're supposed to arrive to one place and just
Change
magically become.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It is heartbreaking.
And it's really, it's also part of my work. You know, this work is still ongoing, so there's nothing really completely finished. I'm going to work on this work for the next 2 years. But that's really one of the target of this work, is to understand that, you know, you cannot ask these people arriving to suddenly abandon the only thing that kept them alive.
Mm-hmm.
Through all the shit that they went. You know, we're talking about human trafficking. We're talking about prostitution network. We're talking about smugglers. We're talking about being shot at crossing the border, by example, between Iran and Turkey. That's what's happening. We're talking about taking a small dinghy, being 20 on the dinghy falls in the water and being rescued by chains. It's one of the interviews I did with a young fellow from Cameroon. It's just insane, completely insane what they went through. I'm certainly not the first photographer to try to document this.
Mm-hmm.
There's been many of my colleagues who made an amazing job on this, but I think that we need to keep on repeat, you know, this message, because it's still completely insane to hear these reactions, which are just ignorance, selfishness, misunderstanding, and extreme right ideologies and fascism. It's just pure fascism with its many different forms of expression. So this work, it's my most recent work in the Balkans, is really about this. It's try to make, you know, Europe wake up from this very slippery slope that we clearly see happening in own countries, and even in my own countries. And, you know, I would be unfair to say other countries. Let's talk about my country in Belgium. There's more and more, you know, this ideology which is taking the place and taking the public place. And that really is worrying me. Because, you know, it's the connection maybe with the beginning of this talk. I said to you that one of my main focus is nomadism and pastoralism.
Mm-hmm.
But because I believe that migration is the normal. Mm-hmm. Not staying in one place, not living in one place. Migration is the normal. That's all we are. It's very recently, when you think about human history, I mean, come on. I mean, I'm an historian. So if you think about human history, we've been migrating 99% of human history. And the last 1% is the sudden creation of what we call the city. Mm-hmm. And now the city is swallowing more than half of the human population.
I think this takes us naturally to a question that was a follow-up on what you were saying in the beginning. We got this question in the chat. Somebody was asking, when you were talking about your final destination, So they were asking, so will your final destination be at home? Question mark, the EU? Question mark, social injustice? Question mark.
Maybe, probably. Yeah, probably. Maybe it's a long journey to just be back to where I come from. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I have the intuition that it could be it. So it could be exactly what I'm doing, maybe without consciously having this kind of project.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true that I started to photograph in Japan, which is one of the farthest eastern place that you can be from Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
I'm slowly moving backwards towards Europe, maybe. I'm still very frightened by the fact of photographing maybe in Belgium, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of respect for people who manage to photograph in Belgium. A few of my colleagues, they do that. For a few of my friends, they can do it. Maybe I'm starting to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Starting to have this really strong desire to document things that are happening next door in my own country.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I to do this journey. I don't know. It's still a very unstable answer that I could give to this. I think I will still always be attracted to Central Asia. It's really where my soul probably is roaming. Central Asia and all the Persian world, the Farsi speaking planet. Iran is really a country that completely attracts me and fascinates me by its history, its majesty, its color. I know that it's a difficult situation in Iran right now. I'm pretty concerned about it. I documented some of the military resistance and political resistance, one of the movement who's trying to resist against the regime in Tehran. Mm-hmm. Afghanistan is also a country that is really very dear in me. Pakistan, all the Istan countries, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, this Central Asia with some more few stretches on the left and the right.
Mm-hmm.
The remnants of the Soviet Union.
Also, yeah, we were looking at those countries recently, right? We were refreshing our geography and looking into which ones were actually part of the USSR and which ones were left out.
There is some real issues there as well to be uncovered. I am fascinated by that area personally. I'd like to look at it and read about it and watch documentaries about that place. And I think some work has to be done as well there. And it is, I kind of understand why you might shy away from being at home and prefer to be there. But I don't want to assume. Maybe you can, it seems like you haven't really thought about it so much. But maybe if you could give me an answer. If you don't want to, it's fine. But why do you feel more attracted to go there if you think there is something to be documented and uncovered closer to you?
No, I can answer easily this question, and it's an interesting one. I think the easiest way is to say that I'm very curious.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love the most in everything I do, in everything I love, in everything I confront, in everything I relate to, is difference. I'm attracted by things that are completely different than me. Mm-hmm. In terms of language, in terms of colors, in terms of ethnic groups, in terms of religion, in terms of architecture, in terms of history, in terms of environment. So my curiosity is driven by this alterity principle. Mm-hmm. So what is completely different from me is really what drives me and what I love, what I seek. So maybe it's another way to answer differently the previous question. and which is probably one of the strongest reasons why I'm maybe less attracted by documenting my own country.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if I may remind to the audience, it's one of the basic principles of anthropology and ethnography.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We can do and we can understand the social structures and the patterns of a culture because we are outside and because we are an outsider. If you are inside of your own culture, technically, it's very hard to see these patterns, these structures,
Mm-hmm.
the things that really brings an understanding of social interactions. It's easier for an outsider, for a stranger, for an alien
Mm-hmm.
to see them, to perceive them, to clarify, to identify, to photograph them,
Mm-hmm.
than it is for someone from the inside. I'm not saying that it's not good, and there are many photographers who are doing brilliantly in photographing their own culture, their own issues, their own society. I'm just saying that me, because I have this kind of BA, this kind of special drive, which I'm super attracted by Central Asia, this Persian world in general, and because I have this curiosity of things that are completely opposite, different than me, naturally I'm not going to photograph next to my door. But it's coming. It really, honestly, it's coming. There's some subjects that I really want to go back. Strangely enough, one of the first project, something that I would call a project that has been published as a book, was an assignment on a palliative care unit, which is in my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is I did this project because it's where my grandpa, the one who offered me my camera, it's where he died.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I needed to go back there
Mm-hmm.
with something in my hand, just maybe to record what had been impossible to record when I had to live this with my grandpa dying. So maybe it was, that personal. But there are definitely projects that I want to do in Belgium for sure, but not immediately.
I think after you spend enough time abroad, you become an alien in Belgium. That's when you're ready to start doing projects. Yeah.
Maybe it's also part of the process. I'm so often away from my country that indeed I'm starting to have this kind of alien perspective or alien feeling about Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not the only one to have this feeling. That there are many friends and colleagues like Gaël Turin and Cédric Jaberet from MAPS agency. And in the few exchanges we had, I know that it's, at some point you need to be away from your country, taking planes, flying away, being away, nonstop, working abroad. I know that for Cédric it was in Africa, and Gaël also in Africa, in India. And at some point you come back to Belgium and you start to see Belgium from a different point of view. Because you've been changed. You became, let's say that something became African in you, something became Nepali, something became Mongolian in you, something became Japanese, or you became a stranger at some point. You're becoming a stranger to yourself and therefore a stranger to your country of origin.
Absolutely. Yep. We have, I think, 2 more questions that we can get to. How do you think your work as a photographer has impacted your personal life?
As I kind of said before, it hasn't really changed who I am, because I was probably, all the things in me that at some point it was natural, obvious, the only option, the only thing I could do with my life was being a photographer. On the other hand, it would be pretty stupid to say that I didn't change. Of course I changed.
I think you just mentioned it in the previously before we get to that question.
Yeah, I change. I change. Yeah, I change. I became different, or I became a different sum of experiences of these lives that I recorded. Every time you press the trigger, you record an aspect, a moment, a situation, an idea, an issue. But at the same time, there's something that is being organically recorded by everything that you are. So you become like a living museum, or you become like a living photo albums.
Yes.
We're not talking about pictures here. We're talking about this kind of feeling that everything has been printed on your skin, on your soul, on your heart, on your history, and so it adds on. There is a beautiful Berber quotes, so the Amazigh minority that we found in the north of Africa. And they say, whoever travels add to its life.
Absolutely.
And so there's something adding extra layers, like tattoos, maybe some kind of a very strange, personal, invisible tattoos that imprints in you every time you take a picture, every time you take a shot, every time you go to a place. I think you become also more open, and it's less and less about you, and it's more and more about life, with a big L. It's just people trying to live everywhere. Just people trying to love, to be loved, people seeking love, people just wanting to have food, to learn things, to have education, to be able to read books, be able to walk safely back from school to their home without being aggressed or harassed. It's just about that. I think it's that kind of very basic, simple philosophy of life that creates in you because of that work. So it's a mixed of many things. You kind of, you become more and more simple because it adds on you. I think it simplifies a lot your ideas and your life, and probably at the end of it, you become a very simple human being. It's probably the only thing that really matters in this life, just being human.
Yes, it's almost like what happened to Buddha. The more he realized, the more simplified the whole thing became.
I think I would never be that.
It's the same
sentiment,
trajectory, or the same mechanic of realization. Let's say that. I mean, we all have all of these things built in us. I think that's a part of being human, and it expresses itself in different ways and some people are lucky to add on experiences, and some people, don't add experiences. But there is no way to really know if one thing is better than the other. Really, you yourself have been to Mongolia, for example, and you met people who never really left their environment. In the grand scheme of things, they are constantly on the travel in nature, but it's the same experience, let's say, over and over, right? Am I mischaracterizing these people in some way?
No, and once again, that there's no hierarchy. Some people need to have these kind of experience, and some people just staying home can really reach these understanding. And I truly admire these people who from their everyday life can reach that philosophical state and that kind of spirit. Which I wasn't wise at all. I was a bit stupid, probably also at the beginning. I was a bit naive. I was a bit misunderstanding. I had a lot of, cliche. I had a lot of social heritage in me, from my family, from my environment.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe every time you leave something, you leave something behind.
Yes.
Which is probably the meaning of your comparison with Buddha. You leave something behind every time, and I think it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. You remove a layer that probably is not necessary. We live our life with many unnecessary layers of objects, of things, of ideas that
Distractions.
distractions. Yeah, distraction.
Mm-hmm.
These questions really resonates bigger in me than before because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because to make it simple, I'm sorry for that. I don't like to do this, but to make it simple, while we were, going through this disaster in this pandemic, we were hearing Western people who I mean, we are all privileged.
Mm.
We are all super privileged people, even with the drama and the tragedies and the loss of the dear ones who have been, went through the COVID and didn't make it. We're still very privileged. The Western people and the Western world is a super privileged place on this planet. And it was really hard for me to hear, all these reactions. Once again, I don't blame them. I don't judge them. I'm just saying that it was hard for me to hear this, while at the same time, I was in contact with people in Nepal, in the Balkans, where I was recently, in Mongolia, where it's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Where whatever happened to them, there was no ICU to take their COVID patient, because simply said there were no hospital.
Mm-hmm.
If there was an hospital, maybe they had no supply. There were no medical supply. Some of them, they had not even a single chance just to reach the hospital. They just didn't know how they would reach it. I had a lot of troubles also with the stay home hashtag. I'm sorry also to be that clear, but I had a lot of problem with all the people starting to photograph their homes, their house, which most of them were beautiful, and I'm happy for them. But at the same time, I was in the Balkans with people just living in squats and with tents outside, just trying to find a new home or just find a place. So this gap, this unfairness, injustice, I don't know how to call it. Sometimes it's really hard to see it that close. And it's something that all of my colleagues will tell you the same. We go to places, and then we come back here, and you hear people ranting because the supermarket don't have their favorite pasta or their favorite sauce or whatever, or because they cannot go to the restaurants, they cannot go to the movie theater, they cannot go to a concert. I'm not saying that it's good, this lockdown, and so many of my friends who are musicians are suffering from this crazy.
Yes.
But at the same time, going to the restaurant, I mean, so many people cannot go to the restaurant
Mm-hmm.
without the pandemic.
Yeah.
So many people cannot go just to have the pleasure, this infinite pleasure, which is to go to attend a play, a theater play, to go to a concert, to buy new clothing, just that. These kind of very simple things that have not been questioned, in this way during the pandemic. That's a privilege. There's been a huge confusion between, being free, liberties, and privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And the confusion goes on. And I think that's going to be a big part of the work that we will need to do. The documentary photographer, photojournalist, we will slowly start to travel again and show the state of the planet. and remind by the work that we do, that by the pictures that we take, by the captions we write, by our commitment to be in the field, to document this situation, to face this injustice with our cameras, to remind to the planet what's going on, and that it's not the same reality for all of us, and that the vast majority of the humans are living in I mean, not in this privileged reality that I have the chance to be in, that you two have the chance, and the audience have the chance to be in. And so I think it's part also of my mission, and it's not only to serve and deliver work for the NGOs so that they can make a difference, but it's also to be part of these witness or just showing, just being acting by using photography as a communication tool to show that, it's time to wake up. It's really time to wake up. And we didn't even talk about the ecological disaster we're going through. We didn't even talk about this during this talk.
Yeah.
And that's another big subject. I said desertification, but that's probably the biggest war going on. It's just that it's not described as a war. And there's more and more of my colleagues and myself trying to go through this front line, but it's really a war, it's really a war. We can talk about war photography when we talk about issues about climate change, desertification, some island disappearing, and with the people living on this island, what are they going to do? It's a war. And we try to make peace with nature. We try to be better. We try to be good, but there are so many strong things going on. I was talking about Gael Turin. He made an amazing job about rivers in Bangladesh, which are being crazy polluted because of the clothing industry. Clothes that we buy in the Western world. And Gael has been documenting this issue, showing, that this complete ecological and sociological, so disaster, polluting rivers, water that we drink, that we use, for producing stuff that will be used maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
Can we look at some of their work? Do you think that's okay?
Sure, yeah.
Can you tell me what to look for? Gael
Turin. I'm sure he will be very happy that we bring some of his work. So Gael is a founding members of MAPS agency, which is one of the new leading agency. And they've been working a lot on many different issues, as you can see.
I'm assuming this is the
rivers?
Yeah, it's this one. It has been exhibited in Visa pour l'Image, if I'm not mistaken. And so you see it's crazy. It's full of trash. People really, it's really hard for them to keep on using the rivers, because the rivers are part of their environment, of their daily routine. There's still a lot of people fishing. Some people are trying to collect also, to do whatever they can. There's been also the amazing work, I think about Frédéric Noy on Victoria Lake. But yeah, you see, it's really...
it's insane.
Yeah, no, it's completely insane. It's completely insane. And however you take the problem, it's always connected to an act of consumption that is happening in the Western world.
Yeah.
Whatever you may think about this, whatever your political ideology, from a factual point of view, all these disasters are connected to the fact that someone is buying something in the Western world. Most of the time.
Yeah, indeed.
And the climate change that I saw myself in Mongolia, in the taiga, that I could see on the reindeers, that I could hear on the stories, that I could see also in the steppe, in this desertification, which is absolutely scary. This climate change issue is also connected to this industrial way of producing and crafting objects and goods that we consume. Gael would be the best person to talk about his project, because I know that he's been really digging into the subject.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is indeed crazy, and the fact that a lot of people are still in denial of such issues.
That the world works like that.
Yeah,
They don't
that
really
just
believe
blows my mind.
I know.
With all the evidence that people are every day putting forward, and some risking their life to get that evidence, you still see a lot of denial, and it tells you one very clear thing, really, and it's money is a big player in all of this. And if you follow the money, you always find a reason why all of this is happening, whether it comes to the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry. You talk even about furniture. What's going on right now with the deforestation? I think it was I've heard about this a while ago in Romania. There was a guy documenting that stuff. I don't remember the name. He was threatened multiple times because he was taking photos and recording.
The cutting of the trees and I remember.
Which in illegal areas, were in protected areas. Basically, they have contracts, and it's a big furnishing company that was basically, and it's affordable, and I don't like that company at all. And they were basically have contracts to cut in specific areas, but they go ahead and cut all the protected areas as well, because nobody's really protecting it. And if you don't want to know why, you follow the money, and you see somebody's pockets are getting bigger, and that's the reason why things are not going the way it is.
You see, it's because you were starting to show some pictures from Japan.
Yeah.
It's because of these issues that I also believe that even if I'm crazy committed to, the work I do with NGOs, I'm crazy committed myself also, because I have my own values, and I'm really ready to fight for that and take a lot of risk for them. Still, as a photographer, also you need to have also beauty in your work, because otherwise you will be depressed, or you might forget that there's also beauty. And Japan was the beginning of my career, let's say, and now I'm back. I mean, whenever I can, of course, not now, but I'm back to Japan with this very strange way to use this amazing country, which is for me like having a moment of break.
It's like
there are no equals in Japan, of course there are. I'm just saying that I deliberately choose to go to Japan with that kind of very light, eyes and very soft and easy. I'm just playing. I'm just seeing things. I play the surrealist with this picture that you see. I cut the heads.